a outline of the process, and if you think of the planning process essentially as any kind of planning process, whether it be land use or whatever, I like to use the example, and anyone who's watched me would be sick and tired of this analogy, but it's like saying you're planning a trip. Say you decide that you want to go to Disney World. I mean, I live in Corona near Flint, so I want to go to Disney World. So, well, the first thing I got to do is I've got to identify my resources. How much money do I have? Do I have any time off for vacation? Who am I going to take? And my wife. I'm going to take my son. Who's all going to go? And so you kind of identify what your resources are. Then you start thinking about different alternative strategies and their relationships to what it is you want to do. What are your goals here? Is my goal simply to get away? Do I want to get there as quickly as possible? Well, if that's the case, then maybe I want to take a plane. If it's, I just want to relax, maybe I drive a car. Maybe I have some folks I want to live, I want to visit along the way, or see the town with the biggest ball of string, or whatever it may be. That kind of informs what my plan becomes. Is what I'm going to do and how I'm going to get there. And then you make the specifics. Okay, make the plane reservations, or get your car fixed, or what you have to do to get started off. But then once you've made the plan, you don't get onto I-75 and close your eyes, and just assume you're going to get there. You monitor how you're doing. You know, well, I passed Toledo, I'm still heading in the right direction. Okay, I'm still heading in the right direction. So that you make sure that you get where you're going. And then when you get where you're going and you've experienced your trip, etc., then you stop and think, okay, was that a good experience? Did I do that? Did I enjoy that? Do I want to do that again? Or if I want to do that again, do I want to do it exactly the same way? Or maybe I want to change it. Maybe a slightly different destination. Maybe I'm going to fly instead of drive. Whatever the case may be. That's the planning process. And that's essentially similar to what we're proposing here. The first part of the process is the community description process, where what we're going to be doing is gathering input into what is the city. What are the trends? Is the population increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it getting younger? Is it getting older? What are the land use changes like? Do you see more industrial development, less industrial development? Are you seeing more single-family housing or multifamily housing? So what's the current condition? What do the trends appear to be? So we look at population, we look at housing, we look at economic information. What are the incomes like? We look at the business inventory. Well, actually, come out here. Actually, I was telling Jake that I've hijacked my wife. She's going to come here for the antiques, and then she's going to help me do the land use inventory as we drive around town and say, okay, there's a house there, there's a vacant lot, there's a business there, as we go along. We're going to do an existing land use inventory. We're going to evaluate the transportation facilities and identify, the major streets and the minor streets and the state highway and how they interact, the sidewalks and other transportation features. We have a separate consultant through Land Use USA who's going to do a downtown analysis, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the current mix of businesses and the characteristics of the downtown. We're going to do a natural feature study where we identify floodplains, wetlands, other natural features, steep slopes. Obviously, you have a lot of parts of town where you have a significant amount of grade change, and that has an impact on the developability of those areas. Wetlands have an impact on developability, obviously. And then we're going to do a community character analysis, which kind of tries to, as much as you can, quantify the unquantifiable. What are the things that make Stanton Stanton? What are the things that, as a community, you say, if we lost that, we would lose a part of who we are that's important to us. So we gather all this information and analyze it the best we can with your input to get a picture of where the community is going, where it seems to be heading. And then based on that, we start talking about, well, where do you want to go? You're going in this direction. Do you really want to go in that direction? Okay, where do you want to go from where you're, in comparison with where you are going right now? And part of the way of doing that is getting public participation. Obviously, the Planning Commission's role is to coordinate and make decisions with regard to the master plan, but you don't have to do that alone. You should be gathering input from those members of the public, who are interested in the community and want to make comments. Unfortunately, people have busy lives. They have a lot of different things they want to do, and so a lot of times it's hard to get public input, particularly if you rely primarily on public hearings. In the past, it would be a planning commission would prepare a master plan, and they'd hold a public hearing, and 2 people might show up. And they really didn't have anything to say. They just heard there was a meeting, so they showed up to see what it was all about. So there was really no public input. The planning commission adopts a plan. You amend your zoning ordinance or make changes to your capital improvement plan to implement the plan. And 2 or 3 years later, you're at a meeting and someone's saying, well, we're going to rezone this property to commercial. And you get 20 people come up and say, what the heck's going on? When did this happen? When did this property get rezoned to commercial? Oh, well, we adopted a master plan 3 years ago and we decided that's where... I never knew anything about that. Why wasn't I informed? So it's really important as much as possible to try to pull the public out and give them an opportunity to have input if they want it. And so as part of this process, we're proposing 2 strategies. The first one's going to be what's known as a stakeholders interviews, where you, the city, will identify for us individuals. There could be businessmen, landowners. It could be people who don't actually live in the city but have impacts, like a developer or someone like that has ideas and thoughts about the community. And we'll sit down for 15 to 30 minutes and talk to them about, well, what do you think? What do you think are the issues? What do you think are the opportunities, etc. And prepare that into a report. The second opportunity is going to be called a public open house. And this actually is going to occur later on in the process, where we've gotten to the point where we've got some preliminary ideas of what we want to do, and some ideas of changes that we might want to make to the master plan or the zoning map or whatever. And then we present that to the public in a very informal, like a high school open house, where often we'll do it on a weeknight from like 7 to 9 or 6 to 9, and invite the people and say, these are the things that are going to be talked about. You can come in and talk for 5 minutes to someone, and we set up stations. One might be land use, one might be business, one might be roads and streets, one might be, I don't know what. But whatever we decided as the planning commission are the major issues of this plan, and we want to get public information on, or public input on. And the public can come in and say, oh, that's what you're going to do. Well, that's a great idea. Well, great, bye. Or they could say, well, that's a stupid idea, and this is what I think about it. And you provide opportunities for them to provide input. Because the public hearing that everyone's used to has 2 vital flaws. One is that a lot of people just will never get up and speak in public. And the second thing is that those people who will get up and speak in public generally do so because they're upset about something. So it tends to skew the conversation into, this is stupid, why are you doing this, etc., rather than allowing for any constructive discussion or even, the attaboys. Good idea, I like that. And also in public hearings, if there is a concern about a particular problem, you tend to pile on. One person will bring it up and say, this is a stupid idea or whatever it is, and that kind of gives other people who are thinking the same thing the courage to get up and say, me too, I think that's stupid too. And again, it doesn't really encourage any kind of constructive criticism or constructive discussion or discussion about the things they like about a plan or whatever. This gives people the opportunity to come and talk about it with an individual, face to face, get an idea, an explanation of what this is all about, and then they can make an informed critique of whether they like it or they don't like it. So those are the 2 elements of public participation other than the formal public hearing that are going to be part of this process. So after we do the stakeholders interview and the community description, the next part of the process is going to be looking at the goals and objectives. And this is basically where we start to frame the vision of what the future of the community is going to be. What are the issues? What do we want the community to be in the future? What do you want the community to be in the future? And try to frame that in a series of goal statements. And then from the goal statements, develop some objectives and some strategies to implement those. And that's where, again, you get into different strategies because, there may be 3 or 4 different ways to achieve the same goal. Some have some advantages and some don't have others. Again, if you're trying to get to, get to Disney World, you can take a plane and it's going to get you quicker. So if time is your priority, that's a good thing. But if you want to save money, maybe driving is another option. Same thing here. There might be 3 or 4 different strategies that you might be looking at to achieve a specific goal. And as a planning commission, we're going to ask you to kind of weigh, what are the values that are impacted by this? Once we frame the goal, then what we'll do is we'll come to you with suggestions that are more in the form of plans. So you have the future land use plan, which would be essentially how is the layout of the land going to be in the future, and how is that going to be reflected in zoning? So what changes in the zoning map we'll be looking at, what changes might be making as far as land becoming public land or going from public land to private land, that sort of thing. Then we're going to do, this is actually new, previously state law didn't require this, but they do now, a zoning plan itself. And the zoning plan, in essence, says, what changes are you going to make to your zoning ordinance to implement this plan, and how does the future land use classifications in your plan relate to the zoning districts in your zoning ordinance? And that has to be laid out in this plan. And then we propose a non-motorized transportation plan, simply to talk about how you can provide better connections within the community for non-motorized transportation, including connections with the rail trail. And then finally, a downtown improvement plan that's going to work hand in glove with your DDA development plan as your DDA gets formed to identify specific improvements to both structural improvements, but also possibly marketing or other activities or things like that you can do to strengthen your downtown. Then finally, you have the implementation plan, which takes these more general types of proposals and breaks them down into specific actions. And it's going to include recommendations on changes to your zoning ordinance and other ordinances that aren't specifically included in the zoning plan. It's going to include an implementation timeline and responsibilities for the top goals or top strategic actions. Because this is one of the problems that we've seen in the past. Either plans didn't have any strategies. They had all these goals and these objectives, but no explanation as to how you're really supposed to get there. So he's like, well, that's a great idea about how we're going to get there. Or they have 800 different strategies, which, again, it's one of those situations where you're overwhelmed with so many possible things to do, you never do any of them. So one of the things that we do when we prepare an implementation plan is we create, we have the full set of strategies, then we have a 3-year strategic plan within the master plan of the things that are the highest priority that are going to be done over the next 3 years. Who is responsible for them, whether it be the planning commission, whether it be the office staff, whether it be the DPW, it might be the responsibility, might be the DDA, it might be the schools. And so again, you want to have buy-in to those entities if they're going to be part of the implementation of the plan. But it's going to prioritize those issues and those strategies so that the top ones are there. And again, I don't know if the planning commission, who else is on the planning commission here? Does the Planning Commission prepare an annual report? Do you know anything about that? Does that sound familiar to you all? Well, there is, and this you're not alone, believe me. Most planning commissions don't understand that this actually is a requirement under the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. But the MPA states that every year a planning commission is supposed to present a report to their legislative body. And the report's supposed to do 2 things. One says, what did we do last year? And then what are we going to do next year? And if we're going to do something next year, are there things that we need you as the city council or township board or whoever to do for us or to help us with? And most communities, like I said, most planning commissions don't understand this. And they're very reactive. They'll come to meetings if someone has a rezoning request or someone has a special use permit request or a site plan to approve. But they're not really working on anything outside of that. Well, by creating this strategic plan, this gives you basically the menu of things that you should be working on next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And it doesn't have to be incredibly dramatic or aggressive. It can be small things. But it gives you momentum moving forward in implementing the plan. The implementation plan will also include a capital improvements element. There will be an outline that can be fleshed out, but that identifies those types of capital improvements that are essential to or important to be completed in order to implement the plan. And then finally, there is another requirement under the Michigan Planning Enabling Act that says that a community is supposed to look at their plan every 5 years to see whether or not they're still going in the same direction or whether they veered off. Again, you're driving down I-75, you're checking every once in a while, yeah, am I still going in the right direction? Well, the law says every 5 years, you as a planning commission need to take a look at your plan. You need to look out the window and make sure you're still going in the right direction. And if you're not, amend the plan or revise the plan in order to go in the direction you need to be going. And so this final element provides a structure for that. It provides a list of questions for you to think about, and it helps to frame what's the plan trying to do so you can see, well, is it doing it? If one of the goals of the plan was to provide affordable housing, then this is how you collect data on the affordability of housing, and this is how you can tell whether or not the plan is in fact providing more affordable housing or not. And that's just as an example. So all that work, basically up to here, is the document. And it's the process that creates a document. Planning is not a book. Planning is the process. The book is just a documentation of the process you went through and what you ended up agreeing on. So once the document has been gathered together, there's a process that the state requires you to go through to provide other adjacent jurisdictions to have comments, and for the county to have comments if they want, before you adopt the plan. And so we will lead the Planning Commission through that process, and then finally, when the document's completed, we'll provide it to you in a format so you can put it on the web or have digital copies available, so you're not relying on the one paper copy left of the plan, as was the case in this case, where you have one physical copy left of the previous plan. So that's the process that we're proposing under the proposal we submitted. Are there any questions about any of those elements? Anything not seem right, or was I unclear, talking too fast? Okay. Yes, sir.
What kind of a timeline are you looking at?
That is an excellent question, and I did not prompt this gentleman in any way, shape, or form.
Next page.
Next page. Next page is our schedule. Here, basically, this is intended to be a 12-month process. Okay, so the first month is going to be this kickoff meeting. So this month, and then we've also begun the data collection, so the population analysis, etc. Right now, tentatively, we hope to have Land Use USA come in to do the downtown analysis in March, but again, it's going to depend on the economist's schedule and other things, but that's kind of the intention. But you can see the idea is that by the end of March, we hope to have all the data collection done, and then have the stakeholders interviews done in April, and so that in I'm sorry, you know, are you reading this right? Yeah, yes I am. And then have the goals and objectives, the first goals and objectives meeting in May, and prepare for the public open house. And then, because the first goals and objectives meeting is basically going to be, okay, what do we, now here's all this information, what do we think we want to do, or here's some alternatives. We got to kind of mull it over, so it's going to take a couple of meetings to kind of work through that. And then once we have a draft of the kind of where we think we want to go, then we have the public open house, which tentatively will be scheduled for June. And again, you guys know better than I do, what's a good time to have something like that. Is June too late? We're going to get people already gone, starting on vacation. Do we need to push it back to May? Do we need to push it forward to July or August or September? Again, there's no deadline here, and if it has to, if we have to, stretch it out to 14 months rather than 12 in order to have good public input, our recommendation would be that. You're not in a race. You're trying to create, the best process you can. But then once the open house, and public open house information has been gathered, that would then give us the information necessary to start preparing the zoning plan, the non-motorized plan, the future land use plan, and then presenting it back to the planning commission saying, this is what we heard, this is what we think reflects the goals and objectives that we've been talking about for the last couple of months. What do you think? Here are the kind of details. Here's where the rubber meets the road. Did we get it right or not? And usually there are a few changes that have to be made. Then once we have that, then we go back in our cubbies and we start breaking out and say, okay, here are specific action items to achieve these various plans. Then we bring those back to you and say, okay, yep, that makes sense. That would work. No, that's not going to work. No, someone suggested that 4 years ago when we ran them out of town on a rail. You know, don't come back to us for that again. And then we have the draft plan completed, and then you get to the point where you say, okay, the draft plan's ready. The planning commission then authorizes us to take it to the city council. City council then authorizes a public hearing. We then send out copies of the plan to all the surrounding jurisdictions in the county, road commission, and other entities. And we have to wait at least 63 days before we can hold a public hearing. Then the planning commission holds a public hearing. Now, the current law says that if the local unit of government, in this case the city council, wants to have final approval of the plan, they can do so by passing a resolution. So at the time that the city council authorizes the plan for public hearing, we normally ask them, do you want to have authority for final approval of the plan or don't you? If they choose not to, then after the public hearing, the planning commission can adopt the plan and the process is completed. Oh, we have to send copies to all the surrounding jurisdictions and stuff like that and get you your copies, but at that point the document's completed, the process is completed. If, on the other hand, the city council says, no, we want to have final approval, which is within their right, then once the planning commission approves the plan, it goes to the city council. Now, the city council can't change the plan. They either can approve it or not approve it. If they approve it, then the process is done. If they don't approve it, they send it back to the planning commission with an explanation of what changes they feel are needed, and then the planning commission decides whether they agree with those changes or not. And sometimes that's where you try to sit down and have a dialogue between the planning commission and the city council if there's disagreements on issues. Generally, it doesn't come to that. So, but eventually, in that scenario, there has to be agreement by which what the planning commission and the city council agree to the contents of the plan, and then both approve the plan, and then you complete. So that's the process. Like I said, ideally it would take 12 months. If we have to move things forward or backwards because of what works for everyone here's schedule or for the schedule of the public, for our public participation projects, we're flexible. It's not going to change the cost or anything. It's just going to mean we won't come here in June. We'll come here in August or whatever the case may be. Each of the X's that you see here represent meetings, and they're meetings that generally I will be the person attending. Scott will assist me in some of these. We're going to have 2 or 3 staff people coming for like the open house and things like that. But generally I will be the person. Both Scott and I are going to be working on this project. Scott's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So you can feel free to call either of us. And if you have a question, concern, you get a copy of a draft of a section and you have a problem with it, please let us know. That's where our contact information will come in handy, and we'll get that to you. Generally speaking, our goal here is to help you create this vision. It's not, we don't go in the back room and create a plan and say, here you go, this is a great plan, this is what you should do. As I've said a lot of times, if I develop the best plan in the world and I give it to the community and 4 months later someone says, why did we do this? And the planning commission says, we don't know, then I failed. Because obviously they didn't have any buy in the plan, they just were sitting there shaking their heads like this when I said this is what you should do. This needs to be your plan. Okay. Any questions? Again, I talked for a long time, sorry about that, but I wanted to get those points across. What's on the next page? The next page, fortunately, the next page is not as filled with words, because this is the final element for tonight's meeting. It's prouds and sorries, and it's an exercise I learned from another planner several years ago, and I find it's very, very helpful. It's very simple, and it's simply this. We want to list, starting with the prouds, I always like to start out positively, those elements in the community that you either would hate to see go away, that you want to see preserved, or that you want to see enhanced. Your proudest prouds. So, anyone, name a proud. Yes, sir.
We are the county seat, and I think the proud that sticks out in my mind most would be being the county seat and providing for future county use.
So the opportunity to attract people to your community, provide jobs for county activities, those types of things, and just simply the prestige of being the county seat. Okay? Anyone else? A proud.
Old-fashioned days.
Old-fashioned days. I assume that's an annual event?
Yes.
When does that occur?
August, the second weekend in August.
Do you close the downtown down and things like that?
Yeah, have a parade and queen contest and prince and princess.
Everyone looks forward to it every year. And
Yeah, they have a talent
Air
show.
dogs.
pardon me?
Air dogs.
We had a dog, dog and water show. and
Oh, really?
It was pretty intense.
Cool.
That is pretty neat.
Another proud.
I'm proud of our recreational areas, but would like to see them expanded in the future, and we have plans to do that.
So recreational areas and plans for expansion.
And I'm also proud of the fact that we have Fred Meyer's Rails to Trails that goes through our area.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
We have lots of beautiful old hard maple trees that give the town a certain atmosphere.
And I'm proud of the cemetery that we have.
Okay. What about the cemetery? Is it because of the age, or is it just kind of, it's a landmark?
There's a lot of people who just have a ton of respect for the way our cemetery is kept up. And the
Lay of the land.
Just the setting, yeah, it's up on a hill,
what?
the setting
The
itself.
setting itself is just a real unique cemetery.
Nice
And
trees.
it's known well, I think, in the whole community, so.
Anything else? Feel free, please, is this the only things that you're proud about?
Well, it is a main thoroughfare and a state road coming right down through Main Street of town.
I gotta check my spelling here.
The proximity to a community college.
And where is that, where is the community college?
South Sydney.
Okay, there, it's
5 miles away.
5,
Yeah, 5 miles, so.
The Fred Meyer Trail was kind of a connector to the community college, because there was a leg off in the Fred Meyer, it's just a short distance down to the community college.
do you get a lot of folks that go to college who live in the area, or frequent your businesses, you think? What are some other things?
Community organizations, we have a very strong Rotary, and then we also have a Lions Club, and there's a committee tied to Old Fashioned Days that's really active.
So we got the Lions
And Women's Club.
and Rotary.
Yeah. there a Stanton Women's Club as well?
Women's Club.
Who has that?
I'm sure there is.
And then there's the Old Fashioned Days.
And the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. Okay.
We've listed the county, being a county seat, but along with that, we have the main county garage in our area, which attracts a lot, a lot of traffic, a lot of.
Road Commission.
Road Commission is located here, it's the main office of the, I believe it's the main office of the Road Commission. That pulls people from all over, employment, they stop or have to come through Stanton to get to the Road Commission.
Okay. Anything else?
I think, our main street has a lot of potential for beautification, and, the streetscaping is, as we discussed earlier, better off than a lot of other communities. Something really to build on.
We're talking about Proud, we also have a fiber optic network for the whole town.
Fiber optic.
Yep, high-speed internet access.
I think our, we have quite an assortment of churches
Yeah, I was gonna say.
in our community, in Stanton. We have
Right.
Okay. And I assume they also provide support to the community as well?
We have huge congregation at several of our churches, and that drags people in
From
from,
all over?
they've done a lot. The churches have done quite a lot for our community, I think.
Okay. Anything else?
I know I've heard this from several citizens that they're very proud of the library. They really enjoy the library here.
I'm a sucker for a good library. Anything else?
Fire department, we're proud of our fire department too, yeah.
We have a number of stately old houses, historic.
Yeah.
So how low can I go? Anything else?
We have the court system.
Best DPW around.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
All you guys in Lincoln,
Okay, well, let's go to the sides, and again, I don't mean to be negative, but again, part of the goal, along with supporting and promoting and enhancing positives, is to mitigate things that aren't necessarily going peachy-ducky right now, or that you view as being a potential problem. It doesn't necessarily have to be a problem today, but something you see down the road as a potential issue. What would be a sorry?
Abandoned homes.
abandoned homes.
The loss of our elementary school.
Yeah, I was gonna say.